Hey everybody, it is December 31st, so this is going to be our very last round the world update of 2017. It's really spur of the moment. The room is really disheveled at the moment. I've been down here doing a few little odds and ends on a couple of tanks, and so we're going to be stepping around stuff and so on and so forth. So as I said, this is going to be a really spur of the moment video. Nothing going on in particular here. In my 29 miscellaneous, it's due for a water change. You can see how low the water level is. It's where all those bubbles are coming from. We got a little bit of waterfall action happening. I recently have started having issues with algae and grunge and stuff starting to build up in this tank again because I lost my rubber lip pleco. I bought another rubber lip pleco today. It's in the quarantine tank in my bathroom down here. I've got a quarantine tank down there as well as a quarantine tank in the room in here. They both now have fish in it, and the one in the bathroom has a rubber lip that eventually will be going in this tank, hopefully. So that's about all that's going on with my 29 miscellaneous. My gourami tank that we still can't really get to because of the Redclawed crab tank that I'm kind of leaning up against right now. Nothing going on in here change-wise. I did find a dead skunk loach several days ago in this tank, and that's something new. I haven't lost any fish in this tank in quite a while, and those skunk loaches seem to be very hardy. I haven't had any issues with them in years. Since I got them, I haven't had any issues with them at all. So I'm not really sure what happened there, but I did have a dead skunk loach the other day, and other than that, not a lot going on. I'm pretty sure I've done an update video since I added the new gouramis to this tank. So I do have the new gouramis, haven't had any issues with them. The moonlight tends to stay separated from the adult moonlight. You know, the new moonlight tends to stay separated way down at that far right hand side of the tank. Other than that, no biggie. I really need to get in here and do some grooming and some maintenance. Still waiting on getting this tank really sort of revamped altogether before I get in there, but it's getting ridiculous. I mean, you can't even see fish in there half the time. It's a jungle. So that's what my real concern with this tank is that it's just so overgrown. I really need to get in there and do some work on this tank, and I've just been putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. I really like the way it looks, though. I think that's absolutely gorgeous. It's very, very lush and beautiful. So we'll get to it one of these days. Moving along. My TBar tank. I added some new animals today. I added two mystery snails, a gold one and a black one. Both of them are right there in front of us. Not sure how the TBar is going to deal with them. I think it might not be working out too well because of the TBar, but we'll see. I don't think the other animals in the tank or the other fish in the tank are going to bother the snails, but we'll see how that TBar works out. I also put a new pleco in here today. It's sold from PetSmart as a high-finned spotted pleco, and lickety split. There it is. I couldn't find it for a minute, but a couple of my viewers pointed out right after I posted it that this, they're saying, is an L38, I want to say, the sailfin pleco, and I've looked at it and I don't think that's it. The markings and the colorations don't look quite right. One person suggested that it was the leopard pleco, or the leopard sailfin, but the markings on this are a little too mottled and a little too random, whereas the leopard, or the L38, if I'm getting that number right, I'm not sure if I'm getting that number right, but whatever it was, the animal in question was very much more spotted than this. So time will tell. This is still very juvenile, and as it matures, its markings will change. It's probably going to grow really fast, It's a big pleco. It gets about 18 inches, so we're probably going to get about a year out of it before it's already, 7 or 8 inches, and that's going to be about it, as much as we're going to be able to get out of a 55-gallon tank. But it's going to be a fun ride because it's going to be a cool-looking fish, and we're going to get to watch how much it cleans this tank up and interacts with the other animals as it gets bigger and bigger. So I'm really looking forward to watching that one grow up. I've always kind of secretly wanted a really big pleco that, eventually got too big, and I had to do something with it because it was becoming problematic. So now I've got one, and we'll see how well that one does. Moving along to my Black Ghost Knifefish tank. I put 4 peppered Corys in there this morning. You can see one down here on the far left-hand corner in the bottom. And there's a few other ones swimming around in there. In fact, there's 3 other ones swimming around in there because I put 4 of them in. 2 of them are down there, and 1 is swimming around up here. These Corys are very... so you can see this one swimming around back here. These Corys seem to be very much more apt to swim around in the water column than they do on the bottom, compared to my experience with most Corys. Even the pepper Corys. I've actually got a few pepper Corys in other tanks. I really like the pepper Corys. So you can see this one's swimming on up to the top. They did that in my quarantine tank for the weeks and weeks that they were in there. They just swam around the tank like they were regular fish and not bottom-dwelling fish. So I find that to be kind of interesting about their behavior. Now that they've been in here, they have been sort of rooting around and rustling around. You can see this one down here on the bottom. It was just sort of up in the leaves there a little bit. So I think they'll settle in and look nice. I also have a new rubber lip in this tank. So I now have 2 rubber lips in this tank. Originally I thought the rubber lip had died and the fish that was left was the bristlenose, but it turns out that the bristlenose is the one that died. And so now I have 2 rubber lips in this tank. My green algae starting to come back on the front glass. You might be able to tell the sort of green tinge to this tank. That's the green algae on the glass. Otherwise, this tank is still looking really good after my last treatment. I'm really happy with it, so we're going to move on to my native tank. My native tank has now got my spotted tilapia back in here. If you missed that video and that little bit of drama, my 125, which we will be getting to here shortly, was just being terrorized by this one. And I really didn't want to get rid of it. I didn't really have much of an option. It was either get rid of it or put it back in this tank. And I don't really have a problem with it being in this tank. I know that this is my native tank, but it's never been a true biotope. So I'm not too worried about that aspect of it. I'm not worried about him getting in here and being some terrible fish that's going to bully and attack everybody else. Excuse me. The way that my cichlid did. And I've already been, so far, I guess we'll give it a few more days before I can really feel confident 100% in saying it. But so far, my suspicions have been correct. And that it only bothers fish that are a threat to it, close to its size, close to its shape. It never really bothered the Congo tetras in my 125. It never really bothered the loaches or anything unless they got too close or interfered with feeding, and then it was just a get away from me kind of shove, and that was it. What we were seeing with my Tenopoma was downright aggression. It was sort of corralling it into a corner and, displaying, showing its dominance. My snakeskin gourami that's been injured, I believe, was injured by this fish. So that's a very different kind of behavior than I saw with the way it treated the Congo tetras and the other smaller schooling fish in the tank. So as I suspected when I put it in here, it's not going to bother these minnows at all. And if it does, it's going to sort of chase them for a moment. They're going to dash out of the way minnows do. That's pretty much a minnow's life. Is dashing, getting out of the way of something else that's trying to eat it. So I think we're going to be okay. I think this is going to be sort of an oddball kind of fish, and my, quote, native tank is going to have this tilapia in there. They do get really big. It's not even close to getting full grown yet. They get about 13 inches in the wild. So we're looking at probably 9 or 10 easily here in the aquarium, provided I keep it that long. So it should be interesting to see what happens. If nothing else, in the spring maybe we can always get rid of it down at the fish store or something like that. But for the meantime and over the winter, we're going to have a tilapia in my native tank again. Also wanted to point out real quickly, you can kind of see it between the rocks right here. You can see it in the reflection down there. That is a snail shell. My mystery snail got eaten. There was 2 of them in here. I've not seen the shell from the other one yet. Speaking of not seeing very often, if you look right there, you can see my Chinese algae eater. I seldom see the Chinese algae eater in this tank anymore, so that's a nice little look right there while we're doing this around the world. And I've got a couple of dying crayfish. Actually, this one is dead. This one is still sort of twitching and moving around, so we're going to leave them alone. I'll give them another day or so and let everybody feed off of them or do whatever they're going to do. And if it's still problematic and getting, chunky parts in there, we'll go ahead and get rid of them within the next day or two. So moving along, I've got a bunch of stuff in my snail tank that I want to eventually talk about, but we haven't got around to shooting that video yet, so I'm not going to talk too much about it tonight. But you can see all the squiggly lines on the glass, and if we look at that big one right there in the back, that's probably, even though that's a terrible grainy low light image of it, you can see how sort of big and thick that is. I'm almost wondering if what I've got in this tank aren't actual leeches. They don't look like, or not all of them look like, the little planaria that I've had in this tank before. They actually look like little leeches. I've pulled them out with my forceps and had a closer look at them. So I've got a macro lens on my other camera, and one of these days we're going to pull a few of them out and we're going to go sit them on a dish or something in the other room where we can really zoom in and get a serious close-up look at what these worms are and find out if I don't have any actual leeches in my snail tank. So not really sure what they are, but I don't like them. Might just wipe this tank out, sterilize it, and start over. It's snails, so it's not like it's a great loss or some huge investment that's going to be difficult to get it started up again. All I got to do is dump it out, clean it out, wash it, and then chuck a handful of snails in there once I filled it back up, and we can start over. So that's probably what I'm going to do, but I will do that video beforehand, and we'll find out, we'll get a close-up look and see what's going on with that. My Gudgeon tank, nothing really going on in here, nothing to speak of anyway. I've still got the rubber lip pleco in here. You probably can't see him, but he is in that cave right there. That's where it stays most of the time. You can kind of make out his silhouette right in the center, but not really. And then, of course, just to the left there is my Gudgeon, who's just sort of chilling, hanging out, not doing much, which is what he always does. I've said before, as much as I love this fish, this is definitely one of those fish that I'll never buy again. I know that might seem odd, it might sound like I don't like him, but he's just not cool enough in the sense that he doesn't do anything. He just kind of hangs out there. If that's what you're into, then I guess that's alright, but for me, I think it's kind of a boring fish. It's interesting in its own right, but only when it's doing something. The rest of the time, you may as well take a picture of it and just look at it, because that's kind of what it does. So there you go, take a picture, hit pause and look at it for 5 minutes, and then you can pretend we looked at this tank for 5 minutes. And then we can move on. My 125, we're going to sort of make our way along because I don't want to try to trip over everything trying to get around it in this tank. My snakeskin gourami, as you can see down there in the bottom right hand corner, is still struggling with the inflated bladder. Now that I've got the other fish out of the tank, the tilapia, I believe the tilapia is the culprit. I've been informed that more often than not, injury is the reason the swim bladder gets, infected and inflated the way it is. So chances are it was that tilapia, and now that it's gone, we have a chance to save my snakeskin. I think maybe tomorrow I might attempt to get in there and see if I can do something with maybe getting a needle and opening up that air sac and letting some of that air out. Maybe I'll look at some videos tonight or read up on it or something like that. I'm a little reluctant to do it. I really don't want to do, what amounts to experimental surgery on a fish. But at the same time, it's not that difficult. It really is just sort of, sticking a needle into an air sac and allowing that air to escape. And if it means saving my gourami, I think it's worth at least giving it a shot. So maybe tomorrow I'll try that. I'm not going to guarantee I do it on video or not, but I will at least talk about it in detail if I do it. And so we will have a discussion about that later. My Tenopoma is back to his normal self now that the bully is out of the tank. Everybody is acting pretty much normal again. You can see he almost looks like he's swimming around the tank joyfully. As I've said before, this is a very interactive fish. He always comes over to greet me. He's always waiting to see what kind of food I'm going to give him or what I'm going to do. He barely even gets out of my way when I'm in there wiping the glass down, you know, doing water changes. He just kind of sits there right next to my hand like he's not afraid of me at all. So it was kind of disconcerting to see him cowering in the corner, hiding from that tilapia when it was in there. I knew immediately something was not right when I was feeding the tank, and he wasn't even coming over to get fed. This left-hand end of the tank is kind of his area. He sort of hangs out down here unless I'm in here, and then he comes over to visit me wherever I am. But normally when I come in the room, he's hanging out down at this end of the tank. So when I came in the other day and he was hiding at the far end of the tank and he didn't come over for feeding, you know, that set the red flags up, and it didn't take long to figure out that tilapia was the culprit. So other than my snakeskin, everybody's back to normal in this tank. I also realized this morning that now that that tilapia is gone, I can probably try to get my water sprite growing back in this tank. I used to have a massive green island in this tank, a floating water sprite, and it was awesome. And then I put that tilapia in here, which is basically a swimming lawnmower, and it devoured everything. So I do have this Java growing in its place, and you can kind of even see where the Java's been chomped and munched on. Look at the bite marks. It looks like the leftover remains of corn on the cob or something, the way that tilapia was in there chewing that up. Vicious on the plants. So maybe we'll try to get some some water sprite going in here again now that he's out of there. That's something to look forward to. My new Redclawed crab tank that has not got any animals in it yet has kind of stalled out. Haven't really gotten around to doing any more work in here. If you've seen my latest video, you know that I've got the wood sort of propped up on the surface there. I have to wait for the filter to cycle in anyway, so I'm not in any huge hurry to do anything on this. I do have some Anubias tied to the woodwork right there. We're going to see how that goes. It doesn't look good necessarily, but it doesn't look terrible either. If you will look at this one little piece right there, now that I've zoomed in on it, I will try to point. It's the little sort of hunchbacked right here. If you see those little knobblies sticking off the side of that, those are new. That's new growth from the roots. So it is doing something. You can kind of tell I strapped them on both sort of upside down because that was the way they strapped on best. So hopefully as the roots grow, they'll grow down. And when I start to see that downward root growth, we'll know we're doing okay. Other than that, not really sure what's going on with them. We're going to wait and see. My quarantine tank down here now has 4 silver hatchetfish in it. When I was at the Big Chain Pet Store today, they were on sale, buy 3, get 1 free. They had 4 in the tank, and they already look full grown. So I said, all right, I'll do that. I've only got 3 left in my TBar tank, so these 4 will make for a nice little school of 7, and it'll bring the numbers back up to what I'm going to, call a more acceptable school rather than just the 3 of them swimming around in there. So look forward to that as well once these come out of quarantine. My brackish tank with Butterbean in it. I actually have a chair sitting right here because I just got done shooting some water change and feeding video of Butterbean. I have lost 1 guppy, and I've got another guppy in there this evening that's swimming kind of funny, so I suspect in a day or 2 I'm probably going to wind up losing another guppy. Other than that, everybody in this tank is doing fine. Butterbean, of course, is fat and happy as ever. He swims around the tank. He enjoys it a lot more now. And as I said, I just got done shooting some video where we did a water change on the tank, and then I got a really good video of him feeding, some really good close-up shots and everything. So if you want to check out that brackish tank playlist and it's probably the first video sitting right at the top of it, depending, of course, when you're watching this video. If it's anytime in the distant future, that might not be the case, but as of New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, that's going to be the most recent video on my brackish tank playlist, so go check that out if you want to see some really cool video of Butterbean crunching up and munching up some snails. So moving on, we're going to say last, and in this case I am going to say least, my Redclawed crab tank. Not that my Redclawed crabs or the Redclawed crab tank idea is not least, but as you can see, this tank is really sorely neglected at the moment. It's just been sitting here. I've been feeding everybody and keeping up on filter changes for the most part, although you can see we're due for a new filter change on the right-hand filter here. We've got really reduced water flow. I've still got, plenty of water flowing, but it's not as much as I would like, so it is time to get in there and change that. What I really need to do is a water change, and I've not done that in, a month probably, so I'm way overdue on getting in there and changing some of that water out. And again, it's just kind of sitting there in limbo, in the middle of my floor while we wait until the new tank over there gets done, and we'll get everybody moved over there. So there you go. We're going to call that all the way around the world. We're back to where we started. I will wish you a happy 2018. Hopefully it'll be a good one for you. Thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed your trip around the world with me. I'll see you real soon in the next one.